Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, Sail Through the Standards for Indiana, and I'm excited to be here today with you all. I'm joined by, my name is Ileana Betancourt. I work at Edulastic. My job is to connect you educators across the country to awesome resources, also to each other to help you support your students. I'm joined here in the office by a couple of my colleagues. We have Jan Moody over here. She'll be on the chat to help you. We have Roy over there. And then also by some awesome panelists and presenters, including Kara here and Kyle. So we have a really awesome program for you today. Awesome. All right, let's get started. And just to be clear, this is a question that came up earlier. Anyone who's participating today, I want to welcome you to use the chat. So why don't we go ahead and test out the chat feature. So make sure that that blue button is set to all panelists and attendees so we can see what you have to say and also so others can see what you have to say. And why don't we test out that chat? Go ahead and write where you are tuning in from. Since most people will be in Indiana, let us know what city. And then second, maybe something fun you did this weekend. So you can go ahead and put that in the chat, test it out. We want to make sure that this webinar is helpful for you. And so that means we want you to be interactive. We know that a lot of people have a lot of experience using Edulastic as well, according to this poll that we had going. I also am seeing some familiar names, which is awesome. Hi, Jacob, and the 14 of you who are in the room watching as well. Great to have you. We have people from French Lick, Fulton, Rochester, South Whitley, go Chiefs, Bloomington, Portage, Cassidy, Gary, Clinton, Monticello, Caston, Mishawaka, Indianapolis, Pearson, Tipton. Wow, people all over. This is great. Awesome. And then it looks like everyone filled out the chat, which is the poll, which is good. It looks like, so we asked, what is your role in education? We have a lot of teachers. We also have school and district leaders, as well as a lot of people who are brand new to Edulastic or have been using it for a few years. And it looks like 6% of people are not ready for state testing. 50% are starting to prepare, which is great. Hopefully you'll pick up some great tips during today's presentation. Looks like a lot of people are almost ready or ready, which is good. So again, hoping that you will use the chat to discuss and share ideas. We hope that this brings everyone together and also helps you feel more prepared. Okay. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation, please put those in the Q&A box so that they don't get lost. The chat, if it's moving quickly, we might not see your question or be able to get to it, but the Q&A box is a perfect spot where we can find those questions. So for those of you who are new to Edulastic or don't really know much about it yet, I want to give you a brief overview. Edulastic is an online assessment platform for K through 12 education, and there are over 30 question types, drag and drop, multiple choice, multiple select, multi-part that you can choose from. There are 35,000 items in the Edulastic Certified Item Bank that teachers can pull from. And there's also 30,000 publicly available assessments. So if you don't want to start from scratch, you can find something in there, use it straight up or tweak it to make it your own. Every question is tied to a standard. So there's very solid standards tracking that allows you to then see how students are doing. There's mastery reports. It also mimics the look and feel of the state assessment. For those of you who aren't very familiar to Edulastic at all, I want to remind you that this is not a 101 event, so we won't be going over the basics. If you want to get an idea of the basics, I recommend that you, at the end of this webinar, check out the Edulastic 101 webinar. And Jan just put the link in the chat so you can check that out. Quick overview, you guys are all the experts on Indiana state tests. As you know, there was the ISTEP, and that's being phased out currently. There's also now the ILEARN, and these are all the accountability assessments for Indiana. It's computer-based assessment. They also have Desmos calculators. Edulastic also has that if you're using a premium or enterprise account. And then grades 3 through 8 in high school are all tested with ILEARN. You can access Indiana released assessment items on Edulastic. Here's a brief screenshot of what this looks like when you find it in the assessment library. You can also just search for the question items themselves. And this is how you do it. We can go into more detail later if you are interested at the end of the webinar. And now we're going to start with our first presenter, Kyle Klein. So Kyle Klein is a math curriculum and technology integration specialist in Delphi, Indiana. And he's been working in education for over 18 years. And outside of the classroom, he enjoys playing golf, swimming with his family, and snacking on cinnamon Jolly Ranchers. So Kyle, I want to welcome you to turn on your video and audio and take it away.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I might need to enable you to share your video if you want to.
Yes.
Okay, press the start video. There we go.
Okay. Perfect.
We can see you. Welcome.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. All right, well, I am in my son's room. He has a much better backdrop, so all the Marvel stuff in the background, yeah, he's got a fun room. So, okay, so like Ileana said, my name is Kyle Klein. I've learned about Edulastic about 5 years ago, and it's just such a wonderful and tremendous asset to all the, not just math teachers, but teachers of English and reading and social studies. So anytime I get to sing its praises, I love doing that. So I appreciate this opportunity. If we could slide to the next slide, please. The big thing I'm going to talk about here is probably like the data and the results that you can get back from from using Edulastic. So here, first off is just a screenshot that I took of an assessment that I have given, and you get so much data in real time from the screen. So if you're not familiar with this, then with Edulastic, this is kind of just like a quick little snippet here, and where you can see how what the class average is, how many students have submitted, how they did per question. The blue line that goes through all the vertical bars, that's the time that was spent on each question. And then down below, you can see all of the students. And so I just have 3 students with the names grayed out here for you to take a look. If we hit, I think it should have a couple highlights on here maybe, if my animations pop up. There we go. Okay, thank you. So the question numbers at the top on the vertical bar graphs, you are able to click on those, and you're able, when you click on those, you can go to that specific question. You can see each student's individual answer. So this is wonderful because you can look at some of the responses, and maybe a student had the correct answer, but maybe instead of just putting -13, they put x equals -13. Well, the teacher can actually give them either full credit or partial credit at this point as well. The other thing I really like to see is this is just a great snapshot of how your students did on specific questions. So as teachers, we typically know what students are going to struggle with, which questions, but this is a great visual representation that I love to look at. On the bottom with the student results, the first student did a wonderful job. They got a 20 out of 20. The next one didn't do too bad either, had an 80%. And the third one struggled a little bit. And so the thing I like about this is these all start as gray boxes when the assessment is started. And so as the student progresses through the assessment, the colors start lining up. So you have the green, the yellow, the red. One thing I really like about this is that if you have a student that either has a bunch of red or yellow at the beginning, that is time for the teacher to intervene if you need to. Too many times, we don't get the results till the very end of an assessment, and maybe later in the day, maybe that evening or a day later. And being able to intervene earlier is really helpful because you never know. That student may not have had breakfast that day. Maybe their dog passed away. They just didn't have time to prepare. So I love getting the real-time feedback for all of the students' answers. If we go to the next slide, please. So another wonderful thing about Edulastic is each question is tied to at least one standard. So it's wonderful, and in the same way, one of the first times I made this was kind of annoying because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time to go through all these standards and mark them up as I'm making these questions because I need to get this assessment to a teacher super fast. And so one thing it does make you do is it makes you plan out in advance a little bit better, but it also requires the teachers or the assessment grade to really know the standards. Because if you know your standards much better, then you're going to be able to click through this nice and quickly. So the other wonderful thing about attaching standards to questions is you can do multiple standards. And in this case, I have the subject Indiana Mathematics, but if you are outside of Indiana and use Common Core Math, you can attach Common Core questions or standards as well, or standards to the question as well. If we go to the next one, please. Okay, in the reports bar on the left, you can do a standards progress. So in this case, we have the standard 5 NS3, so number sense, and the third standard under number sense for grade 5. For this little bar graph, we have a pre-test and a post-test, so we can check how our students improved by giving them a pre-test through the post-test. As you see along the very top, right underneath the standard, it says the different colors mean it's not mastered, almost mastered, mastered, or exceeds mastery. So when we look at our paid version, sorry, if you look at the paid version, I just looked at the comments. When we look at our bar graph on the left, you can see our pre-test, which is kind of what we want to see. And then we look on the right for our post-test, we saw a lot of growth. And so that's something that in the report section, I love being able to drill down to each standard and be able to see, okay, well, which are the standards that we need to go back over, or which students need to improve on these standards as well? Because we still had, on our post-assessment, 1/3 of the class was struggling with 5 NS3. Last slide, please. Okay, this is my last one here. Along with the standards progress, I love the standards gradebook. And once again, you can see the not mastered, almost mastered, mastered, and exceeds mastery color schemes as we go through here. This is for an entire power standard, as you'd say. So this, I cut off the screenshot a little bit, but because I only wanted to have like the first 3 standards. But this shows our mastery level for 5 NS1, 5 NS2, 5 NS3. We're doing outstanding at our school in 5 NS2, so we don't really have to take a lot of time during our buffer weeks to review the standard. However, 5 NS1, 5 NS3, we need to take a look back, and we either need to work as a group, maybe on NS3, but then we have a smaller group we might be able to pull some kids during the intervention time to work on NS1. So I love the reporting. I love all the feedback the teacher can get. And then my current role as a math coach and tech coach, for the math coach, I'm able to pull these standards and I'm able to look at these for to work with our teachers and say, okay, here's a plan for our students moving forward. So I think that does it for my part, I believe.
Awesome, thanks, Kyle. That's a really great overview of how the data can be so powerful for knowing when to support students through intervention or know when students are on track. And I love the Bitmojis, very fun. So Jan just entered a link in the chat about the reports that are available. If anyone's interested in that, looking at the comments. If anyone has any direct comments for Kyle, you can enter them now. We can also get to them at the end. Jacob says these reports pull standards information by question, so across all quizzes students take, which is great. All right, we're gonna move on to our next featured presenter. And again, if you have questions, lingering questions, please go ahead and add them to the Q&A and we'll get them at the end. We'll also have some time for discussion then. So our next presenter, Dr. Pickens, is a high school and dual credit ELA teacher and currently teaches at Springs Valley Junior and Senior High School in Southern Indiana. She loves using technology in the classroom because it enables her to create a rich, differentiated curriculum that incorporates diverse voices in order to foster critical thinking, community, and growth. She also has experience writing online curriculum and OER resources for the Indiana Department of Education's Office of E-Learning and the Southern Indiana Education Center. So welcome, Kara, and I'm going to invite you to come on, turn on your video and audio, and begin your part of the presentation. Thanks for being here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kara Pickens, and I'm currently battling a cold, so I hope that everyone can hear me and that this goes well. We can go to the next slide, if possible. I've been using Edulastic for the last 4 years. 4 years ago, I was telling another teacher that I really wish there was a program that enabled me to create my own assessments using those technology-enhanced questions, and this teacher was like, there is. And so I've been a huge fan of Edulastic ever since. I use it for my ISTEP 10 students, but I also use it in my advanced placement classes and even my dual credit classes that I teach. I just love all the features that's available. It also, based on the trainings that I've had, it connects really well to ILEARN and not just ISTEP. And it also has tech-enhanced questions for mathematics, even though I'm focusing on English. And for the past 3 years, I've used the free version, and the free version has a lot of features. So there were some questions about that in the chat, so I just wanted to share that with you all. But there's also some really great features in the paid version as well. If we could go to the next slide. At the end of ISTEP testing last year, I surveyed students about what we did in the classroom, and this was kind of some of their responses. They felt like the skills that we worked on really related to ISTEP. And then if you go to the next slide, and they felt like the format of assignments were really similar to ISTEP, and that's because we used Edulastic for our assessments. And if you can turn to the next slide. I also surveyed students about what we worked on in class that was really helpful for ISTEP. The number one answer was the method I used to teach constructed response. So Edulastic had some stiff competition there, but students also mentioned Edulastic a lot as something that was helpful for them in preparing for ISTEP. And initially they had some complaints about it, but now I have those same students this year and they know that that's just what we do, and the complaints have stopped. They found it to be really valuable, and they understand that now. If we can go to the next slide. I start the year off by actually creating electronic lesson plans for students using Edulastic, and this just gets students used to the format. I also use this for my e-learning days because I find that my students don't like their assignment broken into chunks. They like it all in one place. So I use that for Edulastic for this too. So here's an attention grabber that I ask for this lesson. And then if we go to the next slide. And then I include instruction, direct instruction for students. And I love what Edulastic enables me to do here. I actually have different tabs with differentiated instruction. So students can get video instruction, or they can get written instruction, and they can use the different types of instruction to answer the questions in Edulastic. And then if you go to the next slide, and then I can create differentiated application for the student. So in this case, they were working on a constructed response about irony, but they had 3 different poems to choose from, one that was easy, one that was medium, and one that worked up to Shakespeare. And so I love that this gets them used to using the tabs that they might see on ISTEP, but it also enables me to differentiate. If you go to the next slide. I start building my assessments in Edulastic, and I usually use all of my own assessments. Edulastic has a lot of questions that are already made, but I like making my own. And I start my assessments by going to the IDOE's item specifications for ISTEP, and that's what the website looks like. And then if you go to the next slide, we all know that the IDOE has everything kind of like hidden on their website. So eventually you get to this. And this is on the grade 10 English Language Arts item specification. But the IDOE has actually put together question stems for each standard. And then they've given sample items from past ISTEP tests. And I use these in building all of my assessments. I love this as a resource, and I think it's really helpful to my students. Okay, the next slide. So this is just an example of what that looks like, and you see that the format is really similar to ISTEP. You have your reading passage on the left, and you have your questions on the right, and you can include your technology-enhanced questions there as well with all these different question types. And this was in particular a letter that was written to the editor of a local newspaper about the OB unit closing at our local hospital, which eventually remained open. But I love that I can create assessments that are relatable to the students and connect to their local communities too. Okay, and then next slide. I also think it's really important as a teacher to make sure I'm including a lot of diverse voices in my classroom. So I love that Edulastic enables me to create my own resources and and create assessments with them. I also can embed YouTube videos. So I really make an effort to embed audio versions of what we're working on for our students right there into the assignment. And I know you can't do that on ISTEP, but I think that kind of scaffolding is really helpful for students, and it's really easy to add that into Edulastic. Okay, and the next slide. I also love that I can add images into my assignments, and this was an assignment where students were reading about the history of bottled water, and I was able to include an old advertisement for a bottled water company that's local to our town. And so it enables me to kind of add things to assignments that can build connections and relevance to students as well. Okay, next slide. Sorry, I'm moving so quickly. I just have a lot of things I was excited about.
This is great, thank you.
And so this is an example of what an essay prompt looks like. You have a pretty long prompt. You have some reading passages, 2 different reading passages. And then if you scroll down, students have a box that they can put their text into. Okay, and the next slide. This is a tool on Edulastic that I've just started using, but I absolutely love it. I have the ability to create rubrics in here that make grading so much easier, and I can add the IDOE's writing rubric right there into the assignment, and students can see it. I can grade it quickly, and I can also visually see where students need help, and I can save those rubrics for my future assignments, which I think is such a great tool. It's awesome. And then the next slide. This is just an example of a technology enhanced question where students highlight the text that are the answers, and you can have multiple correct answers. Okay, and that if you go to the next slide, you'll see what this kind of looks like on ISTEP. It's very similar to that ability to click on the text that's the correct answer. Okay, and I just saw a comment there in the chat. I share a lot of my assessments on Edulastic, so I love that I can share that with other teachers to use as well. So please feel free to look them up. And that's all I have.
Awesome, thank you, Kara. That was really fantastic and really nice to visually see how you're crafting these questions and how it looks. I appreciate this picture at the end that shows what it looks like in ISTEP. So I think someone mentioned in the comments, it's really great to give students practice on something that'll be similar to what they're gonna see when they go to the test, so that there aren't too many surprises. So that's really great. I also saw some questions coming through on the chat that we can refer back to. So some people were just making some nice positive comments about what you shared. It was really great, thank you. Someone's asking about how to make a rubric. I think Jan's going to post that link in the chat. It's a premium feature. And someone's asking about technical hardware requirements. So you can use an iPad for using Edulastic as well. Any computer, you just can't do it on your mobile device because technically it just doesn't really work out. I think also if you're trying to practice for a state test, you want to do it on the device that they're going to be taking it on in real life.
I do have students try to use their phones, and they sometimes can, but it's not optimal.
Okay, good to know. And then we're actually at our question and discussion section. So if anyone has questions for Kara or for Kyle, please go ahead and add them to the discussion if you have your own thoughts or ideas here. Again, it's a discussion. We want you all to be able to share that. I want to take a quick moment before we dive into discussion and questions to announce our random winner. So with our Sort Through the Standards series to help educators have a more smooth journey or go smooth sailing towards state testing success, we're doing a swag giveaway. So Jan picked a random person during the presentation, and our random attendee winner for the day is Jill Rissinger. So we have your email from your registration, and I want to congratulate you because we're going to be sending you some Edulastic swag. Thank you for attending our event today. We're also entering everyone into a raffle, so everyone who attends these events are being entered into a raffle for a free teacher premium account. So there'll be 2 winners there. So hang tight if you didn't win the giveaway today. There'll be one at the end. Awesome, Jill. Sounds like she heard. Okay. And then again, before we dive into discussion, there are resources online for you to help you as you're using Edulastic. You can find training resources, videos, quick start guide, teaching strategies, more webinars like this on our teacher training hub. I think Jan is entering the link for that. We also have upcoming webinars if you have friends in other states. And stay in touch with us. Follow us on Twitter if you don't already, and connect with both our presenters and others on this webinar there. I'm going to go back then to our question discussion page. So it looks like some things are coming through. And Kyle, if you want to chime in as well, I'm going to open this up. If you guys want to take any of the questions, or if any are directly at you, I welcome you to answer those. Or if they're more technical, we can answer them on the Edulastic side. So Lorenda's asking, how did you find rubrics for essay writing? So that can be found. You can either make your own rubrics or you can write them yourself in the Edulastic Premium version. That's an option that's at the bottom of when you're creating the question type. And I think it's explained in the link that Jan sent. Kathleen has a question that might have to do with maybe the timeline of when you're starting to prepare students for iRead or maybe even ILEARN or ISTEP. Maybe Kara or Kyle, do you have any thoughts on that question? Do you see it in the Q&A box?
Well, I really try to do it all throughout the year and just set a standard that that's where our assessments are and that's how we do them. And I also just think, especially with ILEARN, it would be so helpful if science teachers and social study teachers were using this kind of tool for assessment as well, because that's being tested on ILEARN. And so the more that students are doing that on a regular basis, I think that helps.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what Kara says on that, because we have some teachers that are actually using it in social studies, and for about like 90% of this class is on Edulastic. And so the kids, after they took the ILEARN last year, they're like, oh my gosh, like that. They told him that he felt like that really helped them prepare a little bit better for the exam.
Awesome. I realized that we have 2 minutes left until the end of the half hour. These are very quick webinars. They fly right by. If you happen to miss something or you want to go back to it or share this with your colleagues, we are going to send out a link tomorrow in the follow-up email. And you'll also get the link, or you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to get the update when that's uploaded directly. Right, does the free version have the same question bank, or is it smaller? You have access to the same question bank in the free version. The only difference might be is if you have the enterprise version at your school or district, sometimes they might add on question banks, but otherwise everyone has access. I can actually show you what that looks like real quick. Let me escape here. So I have the Edulastic open here. When you log in, you're usually going to find yourself at the dashboard. Then coming from the dashboard, you go to the library. And then you can enter IDOE for Indiana Department of Education. And that'll pull up the released items for Indiana. So you can sort. You can also sort by grade level. Right now it's set on Edulastic Certified, but if you wanted to look for ones by other users, other teachers on here, then you could also adjust that so it's just the public library. So that would be underneath the collection. Okay, let's see, I think there's another, oh, perfect. Okay, great. Are there any other questions? We have hit the end of the half hour. Again, crazy, it flies by. So I do want to quickly thank Kara and Kyle for joining us today and for all the fantastic information they shared online. And those of you who are online, again, I'm noticing some other Innovator team members. Thanks for joining in and sharing with your colleagues as well. Thank you, Jacob. Great, and this was a lot of fun. Thanks for sharing this half hour with us on this Monday. Hope everyone's February is off to a good start.
Yeah.
Thank you.